Welcome to Tool Crave, a podcast where I chat with the best and brightest makers to gain insights on how they make and discover which tools they really use and which tools they covet. I'm Timothy Dahl, the founder of Charles & Hudson Media and former editor at Popular Mechanics, Lifehacker, and This Old House. Today's guest is my good friend Marc Lyman. He runs the popular site Home Fixated and is also a Sotheby's Realtor in the San Diego area. We reminisce on the early days of blogging, and he shares his tips on buying a home and the latest tools and products that he loves. Hi, Marc. Thanks for being here.
Hey, Timothy. Great to be with you.
I'm excited to have you on. Feel like I've known you for quite a while. You're one of the first home improvement tool bloggers that I know of. Is that would you agree?
Yeah, I feel like we connected very early on in at least my career and probably yours as well on that front. I think now that I think about it, I think you won one of the Home Fixated giveaways.
I was just going to mention that because I had signed up. I forget now what tool it was, but I had signed up for something, and at that time, I was just kind of in that world, and I said, "Hey, I might as well throw my name in the batch here." And then, a couple weeks later, I got this cool tool. I'm like, "Oh, hey, that's neat." And then we met up later. I'm like, "Oh, hey, yeah, you're the guy who I won that tool from." So yeah, that was fun.
Which by hindsight is kind of ridiculous because now that's just tools are a way of life for us, right? We're constantly reviewing them, and so it's funny that you wound up winning one early on.
Right. Kind of at this point now, I am not trying to acquire more tools in that sense. So yeah, but at the time it was very exciting, and yeah, I appreciate that.
I know there was some ad for a high tech company a while back, and they had like a little bell that would go off each time an order came in, and at first they would clap after each bell, and then all of a sudden the bell was just going ding 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 ding, and panic set in. And I kind of think about that with tools. Like when you first start in this business, it's like, woohoo, free tools. It's like our dream come true, right? And then all of a sudden you realize the free tools aren't really free. Like it turns out you have to photograph them and take videos of them and post them to social media and write about them. And so it's there's a transition point when you realize that, I think.
You're right. There's a lot that goes into it that people don't know about.
Yeah, for sure.
So how did you get into the whole tool world and talking about home improvement?
Yeah, I was fortunate to have a really great mentor on that front, and so I grew up with a single mom, and my mom set me up with a big brother from the Big Brother Big Sister program. And he was an engineer type that just basically would do anything on the DIY front. And so when I was growing up, we did stuff like we built a go-kart like from scratch, and welded a frame together, and built a custom seat for it, and stuff like that really kind of got my feet wet a little bit in terms of being interested in tools and doing projects. And then kind of as being, the man of the house from a pretty early age, I was kind of the one tinkering on the house, and in some cases messing it up, but in other cases repairing it. And so that really, I think, kind of got me started. And then later around high school, I spent a summer with that same mentor remodeling a house in Palo Alto, which is around the area I grew up in the Bay Area. And so that kind of got me interested in all that stuff. And then I bought a home, and once I had my own home to tinker on, then it was game on in terms of tackling projects. And it's just a lot of fun for me to work on a house and get the satisfaction of taking something and improving it or fixing it, and it's a really gratifying process.
Well, that's a great story. Really, pretty unique there. At what age were you introduced to your mentor and got involved with? So you said the Boys and Girls Club.
Through Big Brothers Big Sisters.
Oh, that's right. Sorry.
Yeah. So, I honestly don't remember what age I started with him, but I was younger than 10, I think. So, it goes quite a ways back, and definitely, I think picked up a little bit of that fearlessness that I think a lot of us need to have. Some fear is good, particularly around electrical, but I think just having that instinct of, oh, it's broken. Well, let me try to fix it. And
Right.
and just kind of diving in there, and sometimes it doesn't work out as we'd hope it would, but a lot of times, if you persevere on it, it all comes together in the end.
Right. Now, how does that transition into wanting to write about it, take photos? How does that go, going from doing it
Yeah.
yourself?
Yeah, so around 2005, which was kind of when blogging was like a newish thing.
That's right.
It was kind of at the just the start of where blogging really was catching on, but it was still at that level where it was more like, here's what I ate today.
Right.
It wasn't blogging in the sense that we think of it today. And so I had this instinct where I tend to over research stuff. So when I'm working on the house, if there's some sort of esoteric specialized tool for whatever project I'm working on, I'll research it like crazy online. I'll order that specialized tool, even if it's something I'm going to use for 5 minutes and then never use it again.
I think we're all there with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I what occurred to me was, I'm doing all this research and I'm spending all this time and I have opinions on these things. Maybe I should just write about it. And so I started writing about it in 2005, and I can't remember how many months I wrote for. And if you go back, you can actually still find some of those horrible articles on Fixated. And I wrote about it. I wrote on the site for a few months, and then I looked at my traffic stats, and I realized, okay, no one's reading this, or almost no one's reading this. Why am I spending this time? So I shelved it for about 3 or 4 years, and then around 2009, I thought, I think I want to take this a little bit more seriously, and traffic be damned. I'm just going to start writing content and do it consistently, and think of it more as a business than just a quote unquote personal blog. And so that's what kind of got me rolling, and I've been doing it ever since.
That's 10 years ago when you kind of really dove into it more.
I know. You'd think I'd have a huge empire by now, but
well, I know you've got a lot of other things going on, and you've got a family and other things.
yes,
So as you said, it's a long haul, and it can be a grind. And so these things just they take time, and you kind of build them to the levels that you can do at the time. So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it is certainly, feeding the internet is something you could do 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, nonstop. And the internet doesn't care how exhausted you are with producing content.
Right.
So I think it's been a little bit of a process for me to transition from being the sole content provider on Home Fixated to really trying to cultivate a team of contributors. And that's something that more of my effort has gone into in recent years, is getting folks on board that have a similar voice, in terms of the content I'm seeking to produce on Home Fixated, which is informative, detailed, but also hopefully engaging and entertaining. And so that's something that I've been working on a lot more recently, and that takes a little bit of the burden off me in terms of not feeling like I constantly have to be cranking out content personally.
Right. That's something I've also been, I'd say, as a challenge. Like you said, there's so much to do, and it's not so much even, I mean, now a few years on, but we used to just write these blog posts, and kind of that was it. And maybe you could share it on Twitter or Facebook,
Right.
but even before then, there wasn't much to share it. You were just, like you said, looking at your analytics and hoping it goes somewhere, or hoping to get that link from some
Right.
other mainstream article or something like that. But now, as you know, with producing content, there's so many other paths that we all need to use, and it just makes a lot more. We could both be doing social media all the time, so
Right. Right.
it's
And
kind of crazy.
it is crazy, and it's technology is so hard to predict. I'm very curious where it will go, because you and I have both seen, going to some of the media events we go to in recent years, the sort of rise of the Instagrammer, right? Now
Yep.
there's people, uh, a lot of people at these media events that all they do really is focus on Instagram, and they don't even necessarily have a website uh, or other channels or platforms. They're just putting out content on Instagram, and it always, I always like to kind of diversify a little bit. And so that kind of model would make me nervous as a content producer, just because I don't own Instagram.
Right.
And at any given moment, they can really change how they distribute their content, and how much exposure that content gets. And it becomes more of a, pay to play or pay to be seen kind of model. So it'll really be interesting to see. I'm starting to feel like the old guy with a website
Right.
at these media events. It'll be
Right.
interesting to see how it pans out. But my feeling is that, there's always going to be people seeking out information about the products that they buy, the tools they buy, and also the processes that they go through to use those tools, projects and things like that. And so I'm still bullish on the internet and websites, and I
Right.
think they've got a future ahead of them, but time will tell.
Well, I think that maybe people come to these things for different reasons. And on the social media side, it's just, maybe pure entertainment. You want to be inspired. There's things that are aspirational there. But then when you're, like you said, if you're really researching a tool, you're going to go online, you're going to go and, do your Google search or wherever, and, try to hit some other websites that are going to maybe have more in-depth,
Yeah.
help. Also, obviously, YouTube as well in that respect.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
When you're talking about some of your current projects right now, some of the articles I've been actually read on your site, you know, actually some of the bigger project pieces, I
Yeah.
think, oh wait, I start reading it, I don't really, and all of a sudden I quickly realize, oh, that's not you. So it's cool to see like there's so much on there that's not you. How does it work out with the contributors? Because again, that's something that I'm looking at and saying like, how do you, somebody would not, we don't have a big budget, and how do I get
Right.
people involved? And if
Yeah.
you can share anything, any assistance there.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I won't say it's easy, because, in terms of the criteria that I'm looking for, I want someone that can write really well, and that has an entertaining, engaging writing voice. And, and I also want someone with ideally trade experience or woodworking experience. And and this isn't to take anything away from the trades, but people that are outstanding, stellar writers historically don't gravitate towards going into work as a contractor, for example. And so it's hard just in of itself trying to find someone that's in the trades or with expertise in the particular topic that also has the writing skills to back it up, and is good to work with and reliable and things like that.
Right.
So it's tricky, but I've been fortunate to find some great folks that have really, I don't think Home Fixated would be where it is today without their contributions. I know it wouldn't be. So I'm very grateful for their contributions, and it's what allows me to continue to run Home Fixated, and also focus on my real estate career, which is my quote unquote day job.
Right. Actually, let's talk a bit more about that, because I don't, was it Art? Was it 3 years ago now when I think you first mentioned we were at a trade show and you said, "Hey, I'm and going to real estate school. I'm kind of going to give this a shot." And
Yeah.
it seems like it's been a while now, and you're with Sotheby's. Can you share a little bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. It was actually about 4 years ago now,
Okay.
and it's been a really great fit for me. And I work with buyers and sellers pretty much in the San Diego market. I sometimes am referring deals outside of San Diego. But for the most part, I'm working here in San Diego, and it's been really fantastic. And I think it uh, surprisingly allows me to kind of scratch my creative itch in some ways. On the listing side, when I'm representing a seller, it it's kind of like starting a new business each time I take a new listing, because I'm coming up with a marketing plan. I'm figuring out, what is it that's unique about this property that's really going to let me leverage, my advertising and marketing dollars and get attention for the property. And then on the buy side, I think that has an interesting sort of tie into my experience with homes and Home Fixated, in that I think I just have some additional insights into kind of what people are getting into. For example, if someone's buying a fixer property, sometimes people go into that very naively. They've been watching a lot of HGTV, and they
Right.
think, wow, this is great. I'm going to, buy this home that's dilapidated and falling apart. And, 3 weeks later, I'm going to have this sparkling HGTV showcase. And, the reality is a lot dirtier than that, and a lot more expensive than that, and a lot more stressful than that typically. And so I think that's been neat to kind of tie those two worlds into each other a little bit. So it's been a really great fit, and real estate's the kind of industry and the kind of work that, because you're dealing with new people all the time and different people from all walks of life, and you're dealing with different properties all the time, it's always something new, always something challenging, and I tend to get bored easily. So real estate's been great in that it's really hard to get bored in, in real estate.
Right. Well, I've seen, like you said, you've some of the properties that you are selling or managing there. I see like get them on TV. You get some great drone shots. You do a lot of interesting, marketing things, and kind of go above and beyond what I feel like a lot of realtors are doing out there. So that's exciting for me to see, and I'm always happy to share those opportunities. I know, what areas are you focused on?
Yeah, so I cover most of San Diego. So, San Diego is a pretty sprawling place. And one of the unique things about San Diego is just how diverse the different neighborhoods are and the different areas are. And I really enjoy that aspect of it. Logistically speaking, it would be great to work in just one location, but that is tricky, and I actually enjoy being able to kind of bounce around to different parts of San Diego. So I work throughout most of San Diego County. Most of my focus is kind of on the coastal communities in central San Diego, but I stretch out to the outskirts occasionally too.
Right. I just, from seeing, smattering of your properties, it definitely are on the posh side. I know in California, LA, San Diego, when you get to $1 million, that's not even, $1 million isn't even posh in a lot of areas, but, a
Right,
lot of the
right.
homes, it seems like, are, multi-million-dollar homes. So is that a specialty of yours as well?
Yeah, it's definitely a focus, but I'm not exclusive to that. And I think, sometimes people look at the Sotheby's International Realty brand and Sotheby's in general, and associate that with exclusively high end properties. And that's definitely not the case here in San Diego. I think there are some parts of the world where that is true for some of the Sotheby's offices, but here it's definitely not true. So I've done transactions that are 200,000, and I've done multi-million-dollar transactions as well. So I really don't try to exclude any particular price range, but yeah, my focus I think is a little bit more skewed towards luxury and the high end.
Right. You mentioned some, helping people maybe get into some fixer uppers. Is that something, house flipping, anything that you've been involved with or interested in?
I have not really been interested in pursuing it personally, just because I feel like I'm pretty maxed out with what I do.
Right.
And so I definitely have represented clients, buying fixer uppers. The flipper market here is, it hasn't been super, super vibrant. I think partly because of our price points. It's a more risky proposition here, at least in the current market, that if you're buying a fixer and then you take the time to do the improvements, it's not always guaranteed you're going to make money. And it really depends on kind of the skill set of the flipper. So it's not something that people tend to do real casually here. It tends to be, professional companies that's what they do, is step in and renovate properties and flip them.
Right. They've got it dialed in with their full teams.
Exactly. Yeah. They've got a super efficient setup. They've got a team. They know exactly what they're going in for. They know what materials they're going to use. They've got all that really, really dialed in.
Yeah. I think it'd be, extremely hard to just go into that without having that if you're talking about trying to maximize any margins there.
Yeah. For sure.
I actually just saw that Zillow is trying to get into that. Did you see that?
No, I haven't seen it. You mean flipping specifically?
Yes. I don't know if they're building out their own teams, but obviously they've got they feel like they have they have this estimate that there's some knowledge there that they might be able to take advantage of their position and do pretty well on that side.
It's funny. I have to do like a public service announcement on behalf of real estate professionals. That Zillow is a great site, and it's probably the number one portal for consumers on the real estate front. But the Zestimate is something that should be, I think, in many markets taken with a grain of salt. And just as an example, when I give a listing presentation to a potential seller, I always include the Zestimate with the comparable sales. And typically what I see is it's anywhere from accurate to off by about 25%.
Wow.
And 25% is a pretty significant amount to be off when you're talking about, real estate. And so I think, and I'm not really saying that to fault, Zillow per se, but with any automated valuation model, there are frequently going to be situations where it misses the mark by a substantial margin. And, and that can be because, they're just in that particular area, there haven't been enough recent sales to really provide a good data set for comparables. Or it could be that the homes are so variable in a particular community. Some of them are old and complete fixers. Others might be completely high-end, awesome, recently renovated properties. So the price per square foot in that neighborhood might range from, $400 a square foot to $1,000 a square foot. And so in those kind of scenarios, the Zestimate or other similar thing, Redfin has an automated valuation system too, or Estimate. And those they can be off pretty substantially in some cases.
Now, I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, and if you're in a neighborhood that, there are a ton of comps and it's a, planned neighborhood where every fourth house is the same model as the other one, then, in those cases, those automated valuation systems can be a lot more accurate.
Okay, that's good. Would you say the 25% is a plus or minus side? Do you typically?
It could be either way.
Okay. Okay.
So a swing of 50% is not unheard of.
Wow. Now, that was actually a good point you made before earlier, is how many comps are in the area you're looking at, and the more comps, that would suggest that estimate can be closer a little bit to reality.
Right. Yeah. I mean, if there's a number of comparable properties that have sold in recent history, then it's more likely to be accurate. So
what would you recommend for somebody just getting into the home buying process and evaluating properties themselves? Is there some tips, techniques there that somebody could jump into?
I think probably the most valuable thing on that front is to. I think if they're really serious about buying, a first step is to get a pre-approval if they're financing their purchase, if they're not a cash buyer, and that just means going to a reputable local lender and finding out essentially what a bank will lend to them, and then having a discussion about what they're actually comfortable spending, because not everyone, sometimes you get pre-approved for something, and that person or that couple is not necessarily comfortable spending that full amount. And then once you have kind of a rough number of what your price range is, then a great thing to do is just to get out there and go to open houses on the weekend. They can be on Saturday or Sunday. They're usually, a lot of Sunday afternoon is probably the most popular time. And you can find those open houses either through your agent or through Zillow or Redfin, or whatever your chosen platform is, with an app or online. And that can be a really instructive way to kind of get a feel for what your budget gets you in different neighborhoods. And I think unless you're absolutely certain about the neighborhood you want to be in, it's also really valuable to go and experience some different neighborhoods that might be, a fit for you. Because really, it's a major purchase, and it's something that you really want to do your homework in. And when you do find, quote unquote, the house for yourself, you want to have a lot of confidence that you're making that decision. It's always going to be an emotional decision, but that it's an emotional decision based on an experience that you've had evaluating other homes. So you really are confident in that decision.
So as many open houses as you can see, the better.
I think that's helpful. And I think obviously talking to an experienced agent, and I think that's a valuable part of the process, no matter what stage you're in. I sometimes start interacting with potential clients literally years before they're ready to make a purchase. And sometimes that's just setting up a property search for them and kind of staying in touch with them periodically as they get a feel for, what's out there, and kind of get their time frame in line with, whenever they're ready to purchase.
Right. Now, if somebody was talking about the agent, how would somebody evaluate the best way to evaluate an agent and see if what experience they have and maybe their previous sales? I see that Zillow has some ratings, but is there anything else?
Yeah, so Zillow does have ratings. You can find many agents on Yelp as well. I think the reality is most people choose their agents very randomly. So I think most people tend to, they go to an open house, they fall in love with the house, and they bump into the agent that happens to be holding it open, and that then becomes their real estate agent. And sometimes that works out great, and other times not quite so great. And so I think it's, if it were me, I would interview several agents. I'd do some homework first in terms of looking at reviews, the transaction history. Some people gravitate towards the top producing agents. And so in other words, the agents that are doing the highest volume. And that works for some people. But just because an agent is a top producer doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get the best experience in terms of representation or communication. Those top producing agents often have a team, and they're only as good as the quality of their team. And so, I've talked to some folks that have worked with top producers where they said, you know what, every time I called in, I had to explain who I was, what I was calling about, and so that's, one thing to kind of factor into that. But I think, yeah, online reviews are a great place to start. And then you really want to kind of mesh with whoever you're working with. And so I think it's actually worth interviewing in person, 2 or 3 agents after you've kind of narrowed down some possibilities from reviews, recommendations from friends and family, that kind of thing.
That's great advice. And I actually wasn't quite aware about these kind of super agents with these teams there. That would be, especially when you're in the crunch zone and you need to, have your one person that's, has your back there. That doesn't seem that very appealing.
Well, it really just depends on the team and who's leading it. There's those agents that get to kind of that level. They're they're highly experienced and they really, really do know what they're doing in most cases. And so, if they've kind of imbued that same ethic to their team and they have good processes in place for their team, then a lot of people do have great experiences working with them. But it's worth being aware that, if you really want to have that one-on-one interaction exclusively with your agent, then, maybe a giant team type scenario isn't the best fit for you.
Right. That's good to know. Like everybody has different reasons why they want to work with people and different comfort levels.
Yeah,
So that's helpful.
for sure. Yep.
So let's change gears here and go back to tools, because I know you see a lot of different tools.
Yep.
What anything particular, any trends that you see happening, but any favorites that you can point out that you're really liking right now?
Well, let's tackle trends first. I would say outdoor power equipment and sort of the electrifying
Yes.
of that is really kind of the biggest trend on my radar right now. And I think, it's interesting. I was at an event recently for Home Depot in Atlanta, and I was talking to some of the manufacturers there. And I'm really curious to see when landscapers start showing up with battery powered outdoor power equipment, because I think we're right on the cusp of that starting to happen. And I actually talked to one of the providers there, and they said, yeah, we know a guy that, I forget what state he was in, but he started a landscape maintenance company, and they exclusively use battery powered outdoor power equipment. And it's from a consumer standpoint, even if you're hiring someone to work on your yard, if they show up, at 7 a.m. with their gas powered blower, that has an effect on both you and your neighbors. And so from all kinds of perspectives, the battery powered outdoor power equipment makes all kinds of sense. But it still kind of hasn't quite transitioned into the market where we're going to start seeing it, and as landscapers are making the rounds in the neighborhood, all of a sudden things are a lot quieter.
Right. I totally agree with you there. And like you said, I haven't seen the transition over the professional side. I actually do know somebody. It feels like it was almost 10 years ago now. A guy who started, similar situation, started a company, and he was using as much of the battery powered tools that were available, which weren't that many at the time. And I'm sure they were
Yeah.
very, very expensive and bulky and big, but he was really
Right.
committed to that for all of the reasons that you just mentioned. And I actually, I'm interested to check in to see where his business is now, because I assume it's a lot better for him. Even the environment is.
Yeah. I mean, for any entrepreneurs that are listening that have an interest in landscape maintenance, I think it's actually just kind of a great opportunity on the marketing front, because we're at a time where the tech is starting to pretty much be there. Ego has a professional line where you basically have a backpack that has the battery unit in it, and their gear is awesome. So we're starting to, and yes, it's expensive, but so is the hassle of dealing with gas and sucking on exhaust fumes all day and things like that. So I think it's a great opportunity for some people to get out there and be, kind of the green landscape maintenance folks, and the neighbors will just start, latching onto that like wildfire, I think.
Yeah, it's got a natural natural marketing built into it with oh, that's so
Right.
quiet.
Yeah.
It's funny too that with something like this too. It's interesting because it seems like a lot of the trends start with the contractors and then kind of trickle down to the DIYer tools. It seems
Yeah.
like the electric. I mean, a lot of them recorded before, but some of the electric tools started out with the Black and Deckers, and now has
Yep.
finally, as of a few years ago, Milwaukee, DeWalt, Makita, they all have now their battery powered equipment that's totally contractor grade.
Yeah, it's true. It's interesting how that's kind of shaped up, and you and I are going to be bumping into each other and hanging out at Milwaukee soon. I'm curious to see when they're coming out with a mower,
Right.
because they've got essentially everything. You were asking about favorite tools. I did a sponsored review recently for Milwaukee on their quick lock system. And have you seen that?
Yes. It's in my hands. Yes.
Okay, all right. And it's funny. We have a pretty small yard here and virtually no trees, and so I had to review a pole saw. I'm like, what am I going to do with this pole saw?
Right.
So I called up a buddy of mine who's also a real estate client, and they've got a good sized property with lots of trees and brush and stuff on it. And I said, hey, how do you feel about me coming over with some battery powered outdoor power equipment and tearing apart your yard? He's like, yeah, come on over.
He's going to keep you on his speed dial.
Yeah, exactly. So it was really fun, and actually, the pole saw, I had never used one before, so I don't have a great frame of reference on all my past experiences using pole saws, but it was awesome. You put that thing up there on a tree branch, pull the trigger, and 2 seconds later, the branch is off. It's pretty amazing. So I was impressed with that system, and I think stuff like that is really going to catch on.
Right. Actually, I know you haven't been to our place here, but we're fortunate to have some trees around here and some really big hedges that require a pole saw. So fortunately I've been able to review a few different ones, and I've got some of these. I think Fiskars makes the larger pruners that are on a big long extension, and those work great. And they have one with a regular saw. But that's once you start using the pole saw as opposed to that, you won't put it down. It's one of the things. I have a steel pole saw as well, and it's just some of them are a little unwieldy and heavy.
That they are a little awkward. They're a little top heavy,
right. But the Milwaukee, like, I have never really been a great fan of some of the extendable things that are kind of things does everything. Right. But yeah, that system has a lot of promise. I think they're going to do great with that.
Yeah. And with a pole saw, it really has to be extendable.
Yes. Yes.
Unless you're pruning hedges,
right.
It's you need some length on there. So
right. And it's interesting you mentioned the mowers too, because it seems like everybody else has one now, and it's kind of been proven. Hey, you can do a mower now, battery powered, no problem. So yeah, I'd put money that they've got one.
I think what I'd be on the verge of putting money on it too. I think my question is, they've been so focused on their 18-volt platform and not really heading out into these, higher voltage battery platforms. They've really been, trying to do everything with 18 or 12. And so I think it'll be interesting to see what they do with a mower, if they bring out a different battery platform, or if they just stick a bunch of M18 batteries,
right?
2 or 3 or 4 M18 batteries into the mower.
Well, now they've got the HD 12, and then they have
the 12 amp hour.
They have some bigger, larger capacity ones. But yeah, you're right. They've pretty much everybody else has kind of split off with some larger platforms. Which again, that would be a huge big thing for them, but I'm trying to think of what else they would use it for, because they've pretty much covered their 18 volt with so many tools.
Yeah.
No, that's great. What else here? So yeah, you mentioned some outdoor power equipment. Anything else on that line?
Yeah, I think another trend and thing that has been on my radar is just smart home and some of the technology that's kind of creeping its way into our homes. And I'm in the process of reviewing it's a whole home water monitor and essentially leak detector. And this was partly inspired because a number of months ago, I randomly woke up at 2:00 in the morning, and I think it was my homeowner spidey sense,
right.
Heard some drips in the background or something. And I went into our bathroom and found the entire bathroom flooded from an angle stop that just decided to start leaking in the middle of the night. And I luckily caught it just literally right before it would start pouring onto hardwood floor and cause all kinds of destruction, right? And so that kind of got my attention a little bit. And the funny thing is, I've actually had a leak sensor in that very bathroom in the past, and I've always found that most of the leak sensors out there tend to be, they're battery operated, obviously, and most of them, their battery dies and you just never know about it. And so I haven't had like a reliable leak detection system. And then I was actually representing a client on a home sale, and we had a fire sprinkler line, like a low pressure fire sprinkler line, spring a leak, and it wound up destroying the ceiling in one of the rooms of the home. It was a very expensive home, so it was painful to have that happen. And right after we got it repaired, and this was, of course, while it was on the market, or actually that one was right before it was on the market. Then there was a home inspection done, and the home inspector thought he had turned off the water upstairs, but apparently like the valve was just sticking. So he thought he turned it off, but it was just a stuck valve. And when everyone left the property, the hot water kicked on for like 14 hours.
Wow.
And this property had like a commercial grade water heater. So it was cranking out, blistering hot water for like 14 hours. And so the drain fixture cracked, and literally the same ceiling that we had just spent a couple of weeks repairing was again flooded. And I thought, there's got to be a system out there that can reliably notify a homeowner when something like this starts, and it's not going to necessarily save you completely, because, they're all going to have a threshold of when it alerts you, but anyway, so I found a product called Flume, Flume. And I'm in the process of testing that. And there's a number of similar products out there, and most of them require that you hire a plumber and basically install a special sensor/valve on your main water line. And that sensor then monitors the flow of water through the pipe, and it can determine when water's running, if there's a potential leak, that kind of thing. And it can distinguish between some sort of high output water fixture or just a slow leak, like in a wall somewhere or something like that. And the difference that I found with Flume was that its sensor, again, it's battery powered, but it's one device rather than, having 14 of these things distributed around your home. But the sensor actually straps onto your water meter. So you go out to your water meter, strap the sensor on it, and it's almost like, I think it almost kind of takes an EKG basically of your water flow, and it ties into an app and a hub that's connected to your Wi-Fi system, and it then tracks all of your water usage. So it'll tell you, how you're doing relative to other families. It'll tell you how you're doing relative to your own past usage, in previous months or previous days. And you can also set up alerts where if the water is running for X amount of time, either in a low flow scenario or a high output scenario, it'll send you an alert and notify you that you've got a potential leak going on. So anyway, I'm still in the review process with that, but that kind of technology, I think, has a lot of promise. And, as water is the enemy when it comes to homes. So anything that can save people some of that grief is awesome.
Well, I'm already sold now. I need one of those. So if Flume, if they're listening, please send one my way. So you put it on the water meter. You don't need to tap into it. You just wrap it.
No, that's what I was saying is like an EKG.
Okay.
It's the sensor just wraps around the outside of the meter. It has like a little bungee cord that kind of you strap it onto the meter with, and that then does its thing. And so you don't. I mean, yeah, I suppose you could hire a plumber to install it for you, but in my opinion, it's not really necessary. Pretty much any homeowner that's capable of, in our neighborhood, most of the water meters are in the sidewalk, so you have to be able to, pop open the lid to the water meter and strap the device on there and set up a little Wi-Fi thing, and then you're off to the races.
That sounds pretty amazing. Is there a subscription that's part of that as well?
That's a good question. I don't think it's subscription based. Yeah, I don't think so. I think it's just part of the purchase.
And what is the per price point for that?
That is a good question. Put me on the spot. It'll be in the article, but I want to say it was around $200.
Okay, that's
something like that.
And like you said, the fact that it also gives you comparables to other families. So it's not only a warning system, but also a warning system to know, hey, your usage is, pretty high. Like maybe there's areas you can cut back.
Right. Right. Yeah. As soon as I set it up, I realized exactly how much water my daughter uses when she showers, which was a lot.
So your instincts were right on track with that.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Well, Mark, this has been great. I know I've taken a lot of your time here, but where else can how can people find you? Where should they connect with you?
Yeah. So, well, on the Home Fixated front, homefixated.com is where we put out most of our content, and all of our social channels, Instagram, Twitter, all that are just Home Fixated. And on the real estate front, it's basically my full name, which is spelled MarcLyman. And same deal there. I've got a website set up for that, and I'm also on social media with that same handle as well.
Excellent. Thank you, Mark, and we'll see you in Milwaukee.
Yeah, looking forward to it. It's great talking with you, Timothy. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you. Thanks for listening to Tool Crave. If you like the show, please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening. Follow along with us for guest updates on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Toolcrave. And feel free to email us at podcast@toolcrave.com for guest suggestions or just to say hi. Thanks again, and see you soon.